Cancer General Approaches, part number 2, and these are based on home remedies that have been proven over time, largely based on the work of a gentleman by the name of Jethro Kloss, and he has done a lot of work, and we'll see as we go through the next series of presentations just the extent and the breadth of his success using many of the methods here that are going to be shared with us. We're going to just kind of review where we left off, and that was here looking at the first step to working with the cancerous condition is just to make sure that all your organs of elimination are moving well. So relieving any constipation, making sure your skin, liver, bowels, lungs, and kidney are working effectively. And that may involve like a detoxification program. And here is the Years Restored is a lifestyle center that I'm aware of. Mercy Ballard runs that and has been very helpful in our family, as well as many others in helping restore them to health and move them in that direction. We talked about this herbal laxative as being a way to initiate and move forward a properly moving bowel. And those various herbs, the buckthorn, rhubarb root, cascara, bark, calamus, and fennel seed. And an American herb shop is a good resource, Christian Seventh-day Adventist who has a naturopathic practice, who has this herb shop to provide herbs to people who are seeking natural remedies. So moving on to the next part of this is that one thing that can be helpful is using a high enema. So a high enema, basically all enemas are a cleansing of the colon process, and they can help reverse and remove residual components that are in the colon. We know that if the colon is not moving regularly and appropriately, you can end up having food putrefaction occurring in the gut, which can lead to detrimental effects, because as that fecal matter stays in the colon and the undigested food matter, if there are any toxins or poisons that are a part of that are being shepherded out of the system, they're going to have longer duration of contact with the lining of the digestive tract. So you want to keep your bowel moving cleanly and efficiently. 1 to 2 movements a day is good. There are people who only experience that like once a week or so. We know that as constipation. That's not good. And basically that's largely a part of hydration and an adequate amount of fiber in the diet. So one of the things that has been discovered through the use of high enemas and cleansing diets is the presence of mucoid plaques, essentially the elimination of some pretty yucky stuff that stays kind of residually, almost tar-like in nature, that is exuded from the intestinal tract, particularly the large colon. And after detoxification, after that's been relieved, absorption takes place at a much higher level and a better level, so that any nutrients that you are taking in are taken into your body in a more efficient way. So there's also some other issues going on with bowel. If you have irritation, inflammation due to allergic reactions to things like gluten or other things of that nature, it's going to be different for different people, but we have what's called irritable bowel syndrome or perforated gut, perforated bowel, leaky gut, particularly leaky gut. Essentially, you're having a transfer of food constituents not completely digested directly into the interstitial space and the bloodstream without being transferred through the tissues of the cell wall. So during digestion, the food is broken down into its molecular subunits, which are then through the process of diffusion and vesicle transport across the walls of the cells. It controls the movement of those substances from the food into the circulatory system. If you have leaky gut or those other types of irritable bowel types of things, the absorption is not as selective and careful as it would be with a properly operating intestinal tract. So one way to approach reversing a condition, a cancerous condition, is a fruit diet in the initial stages. So all fruits should be fresh. They should be tree or vine ripened and not green harvested, which is in our day and age is a challenge because many fruits are harvested green for the shipping purposes because green fruit doesn't damage as readily as undamaged fruit. So be very selective of the fruit that you do purchase and use. It needs to be tree ripened. It needs to be ready to eat upon consuming. So citrus family, orange, lemons, and grapefruit are excellent for this. Tree fruits, apples, pears, peaches, and cherries. And berries are very good. Red raspberries are the highest fiber fruit that we know of. So fiber is very good for helping to move food through the intestinal tract. Fiber also picks up and shepherds toxins out of the digestive tract, out of the body. It ties those things up. And having adequate hydration is important with that too. Some additional ones, tomato, avocado, pineapple are also excellent fruits to be used when doing this portion of the cleansing process. So using fruit is important. Fresh, vine, and tree ripened. One of the components to that is that when fruit is vine ripened or tree ripened, that it develops its maximum antioxidant capacity. Green tomatoes, for example, or other fruit that is not ripened, the antioxidant qualities of their skins have not been fully developed, and that is actually the reason that we eat fruits. The sweetness is there to trick us into eating them. We actually often peel them, but most of the antioxidant capacity of fruit is in the skin itself. So of oranges, of tomatoes, of apples, because when you peel an apple or a pear, for example, it starts to go brown fairly quickly. That browning that you see is oxidation that's taking place. The skin prevents oxygen from getting to the fruit portion of the fruit, the meat portion of it, but it doesn't have antioxidant protection as a part of that. That's why it oxidizes quickly. But the skin is where those compounds are found. So it's recommended that you don't use canned, use fresh as much as possible because you have additional sugars and syrups that are part of canned fruits. And refined sugar, particularly cane sugar, is implicated in helping promote cancer development and feeds cancers. So knocking out the sugar, refined sugar in particular, fruit sugar that's a part of the whole fruit, that's a different story than sprinkling on the sugar, adding sugar to baking and things like that. If you're going to do baking, for example, you may want to use a whole sugar like dates or honey. Something like that, applesauce, rather than using a refined sugar. Tomatoes, it's recommended that those be eaten separately and can be made as an entire meal. So you can eat them fresh, you can eat them dried, you can eat them stewed, you can eat them in a variety of different ways, smoked on toast, for example, lots of different ways. It may seem overwhelming. You may be able to use some herbs along with that too, because herbs actually have a very high antioxidant capacity in their own right. So like basil and oregano are very high in antioxidant qualities. So for the first 10 days or so, plus or minus, depending on the individual, should be like a high fruit or like a fruit-based diet. So use nothing but unsweetened fruit juices if you're going to be doing that as well. So individual juices, not mixed juices. So like orange juice, grapefruit juice, pineapple, lemon, grape, using them individually, unmixed, and rotating through them. So you have a different juice at different times. Vegetable juices can also be beneficial and rotated through in a similar fashion. So celery, cucumber, parsley. Parsley is actually a lot more mild than I expected it would be. Lettuce and carrot, and the vegetable juices can be mixed together. Carrot is very beneficial. So carrot in quantity is an excellent component of the vegetable juices and can be used as a primary component of the juice. The vitamin A in carrots is very beneficial. It's interesting that when they actually found that vitamin A was beneficial for cancer, particularly benefiting in lung cancers, I believe, they started treating people with extracts of vitamin A, and they found that they had to halt those studies. And these were actually viable studies that were done ethically. They had to stop those studies because they were actually worsening the condition, which is something that they should do, not go on and not cover it up or hide it, but just see where the data takes you and follow that data. Just like we should the scripture. We should need to follow the word and follow where the scripture takes us, and check everything with the word. Good science is done the same way. We don't try to bias the science in one direction or another. We see where the answers or the results take us. And they stopped those studies, finding that the synergistic effect of the whole carrot, the vitamin A in its whole food matrix, was much more beneficial than taking a vitamin A extract on its own. It actually created more issues when it was by itself than when it was in concert with its other constituent makeups. So carrots are a good part of a good juice protocol. So you should drink vegetable juice daily, looking like about 12 glasses of juice. So 6 glasses of fruit juice over the course of the day when you're doing the juice initiation, and 6 glasses of herbal tea. You want to rotate those, eating or drinking the herbal teas about an hour before the juices are taken. So you're separating them. They're not just taken one on top of the other. Spreading it out also prevents overfilling of your stomach. Some excellent teas to have as your herbal tea array are astragalus. You can use that in powdered form or as a tea form. Podiarco. So Podiarco and astragalus are both excellent for cancer as well as for antiviral roles. Red clover, we'll see a little bit later. We've talked about this before, just the benefits of red clover. St. John's wort, skullcap. There's some others that can be beneficial as well. So if they're taken in a capsule form, you want to use a 00 capsule size, which is the smaller size, doing the intake, and then follow that with hot water. The hottest water is safe for you. That helps it to dissolve more quickly and to be released into the circulatory system, the stomach, more quickly than if you were to just take it with cold water, for example. Let's see, there's something else I was going to say about that. So the herbs in capsule form are another way to take it, as opposed to in the tea form. All right. So, I was going to say about the capsules. So you can get gel capsules or you can get veggie caps. The gel capsules are a gelatin base. So basically that's taking animal hooves and grinding them up into the gelatinous matrix, much like you get in like gelatin. And then that's formed into capsules. And many capsules are gel caps. You want to look for veggie caps. So it's a vegetable-based capsule that is suitable for people on a totally plant-based diet that can use those without having animal products as a part of their consumption. So do look for veggie caps when buying your capsules. The second step is to just be paying attention to your weight. If you have a significant reduction in weight, you're going to have some weight drop just because of reduced calorie intake with the fruit juices. But you want to maintain a healthy weight. You don't want to go underweight. So after a few days, watching your weight, if you start to continue on down, you need to add some calories to it. So a nourishing diet that's alkaline in nature. So you don't want to have your diet or your diet to be completely alkaline. You want to have a balance such that it tends alkaline, but you don't want to have a totally alkaline diet, nor do you want to have a completely acidic diet. If your body is tending toward an acidic state, it tends to be more unhealthy. There's more inflammation and disease processes associated with a diet that is tending more towards acid. A diet tends more towards acid when it includes animal products, dairy products, and excess of protein, particularly of an animal nature. An alkaline diet tends towards alkaline when you're using plants, particularly vegetables. And so here is a recipe for a nourishing alkaline stew. So 1 cup each of diced carrots, cabbage, and celery, and using potatoes in addition with their peels on. So again, we talked about how the antioxidant nature is found in the peels, and the eyes actually have some beneficial qualities that if they're poked out, you're not able to get those. So don't poke the eyes out. Keep the peels on, and that would be true for the carrot too. Keep the peel on. If you want to scrub them, that's fine, but keep the peels. Cabbage doesn't have a skin. Celery doesn't have a skin. And then a 1/2 cup of onion. So one of the things that onion provides is a compound called quercetin. You can buy quercetin, starts with a Q, Quercitin. You can purchase that on its own as an extract. But again, most of those things are more beneficial in a synergistic way when eaten as a whole food, in a whole food matrix from which they originated. With the celery and cabbage, you want to make sure you use the leafy parts to it as well. So don't throw that away. Those leaves are an excellent component to be added into the stew, into the soup. And the leaves of cauliflower, most of the times when you purchase cauliflower, the green leaves are missing, but those are really beneficial to add to the stew. Use a gallon of water, so that'll kind of give you an idea what size of pot you need to be using. Bring that to a boil. Throw in a cup of brown rice and simmer that whole concoction for 1 to 2 hours. That'll give the rice a chance to soften up and cook, and then salt that to taste. You can also add some soy milk or tomato juice, add various other greens, and then boil, strain, and drink. So you're basically boiling that whole matrix, that whole kettle full, and then you're straining out the solids and drinking the liquid. So with people who have stomach cancers or ulcers, or people who are otherwise invalid, you may want to mash it. So you're going to get some more nourishment from mashing it or liquefying it, as opposed to just drinking the broth per se. The leftovers can actually be used too, and can be used. You can eat it like a soup, but if you have particular irritations that may make food digestion more difficult, the tea or the broth is very, very nourishing. There's another recipe here. Recipe 2, use 2 large carrots, 4 turnips, 4 onions. So the turnips are kind of in place of the potatoes. Turnips have a bit of a nip to them. 4 onions. So this is going to be a large vegetable content stew. Use lots of parsley. So a lot of green parsley in there. Parsley we talked about a couple weeks ago, and the benefits of parsley. The chopped green cabbage leaves, a medium bunch of celery, again including the leaves along with the stalks. One of the things about celery is that it has a good sodium content to it as far as vegetables go. It has a very good sodium content to it. 1 cup of lima beans, those can be fresh or frozen, and 1 cup of peas, fresh or frozen. So essentially frozen vegetables retain about the same nutritional value as fresh. Once they get cooked, then they start to reduce their nutritional value. Canned, it brings them even to a higher temperature than just simple cooking on the stove for the canning process, and that's going to greatly diminish their nutritive value. So fresh and frozen are essentially equivalent. And then you can puree that, made from 1 cup of the two different pieces, the lima beans or the peas, depending on if we want to have it more fluid in nature as opposed to having the vegetables in their whole form. You can use soy sauce or salt to taste. I would recommend sea salt over soy sauce. Soy sauce is very salty to start with, but that tends to be a brew that is made from soybeans that can have some neuro excitation effects. You may have heard of a compound called monosodium glutamate, or MSG. Glutamate is actually a naturally occurring compound in tomatoes. It gives them a good taste, but it also happens to be an excitotoxin. If you get too much of it, it can overstimulate nervous activity, neuron activity. It actually shows up in nerves that are dying. They give off glutamate. So I would lean towards the sea salt. Along with the sea salt, you're going to be getting additional minerals that you may not get otherwise, especially if you're using refined salt. So refined salt will sometimes have other things in it, like silica and dextrose, which is a sugar. They essentially function as flow agents, and they also tend to bulk up the content of your salt. So when you're getting sea salt, you're getting a dense salt product. When you're getting other box salts that have fillers associated with them, is essentially a weakened salt, and they're fluffing it up essentially to get more volume and jipping you from your salt. So cut those veggies into small pieces. Don't boil it hard, and simmer it till they're soft, and then enjoy the stew. So some other nourishing alkalized foods. Mashed potatoes are really good. You want to steam them versus boiling them. So basically, you want to have a pot that has a perforated bottom to it, and fill it right up to those perforations so the potatoes aren't actually sitting in the water. When you boil things in water versus steaming them, they lose nutrients in the water that they're boiled in. So steaming broccoli, steaming all your fruits and vegetables, not your fruits, but your vegetables that you're eating, it's going to maintain their nutrient level at a higher level. So again, save the eyes when you steam them. So mash, you can add soy milk or other non-dairy milk to it to give it a creamier aspect to it. I like to add garlic powder to taste, and you can eat it just like that, or you can bake it in a pan for 20 minutes. It's interesting that potatoes and most other vegetables, when they are cooked, they change. It's a process essentially. They start to break down, and potatoes break down from a complex starch into a simpler starch, and if they're eaten right away, they're fairly high glycemic. But if you let them set overnight and they're cold, a cold baked potato or a cold boiled potato is a lower glycemic effect on the body. That is making the blood sugar rise less dramatically when they're left overnight, as opposed to eating them immediately after they've been cooked. So here's a list of a variety of different alkaline tending foods that are beneficial in keeping the body in that direction. And another thing that will really help is eliminating any animal source protein and food. That will help move the body towards an alkaline state. Again, you don't want to have a completely alkaline body. That's not healthy, but it should be tending that direction. So brown rice, soy cheeses, carrots, tender corn, celery, garlic, cucumbers. It's a very varied list. There's something here for everybody. And there's other things beyond this list too: squash, beets and beets greens, dandelion greens, Chinese cabbage, sprouted wheat. So sprouted wheat is going to be good because the compounds in the leaves, the green leaves, have some anti-cancer effects in their own right. The wheat itself, the flour, is going to have potential to have gluten present, which can be, for some people, an inflammatory trigger. So the sprouted wheat is different from the seeds themselves and the gluten that's present there. Red cabbage and eggplant are both very good. Red cabbage is good because of the purple pigment. Typically, vegetables that are deep in color are more beneficial because of those phytopigments as compared to things that are whiter, like your basic white potato or your iceberg lettuce. Or cauliflower is good for you, but it doesn't have the pigment. You can even get purple broccoli, and that would have a higher phyto compound matrix to it than a green broccoli would. So some other things that are helpful: wild rice, yellow cornmeal, watermelon, tomatoes. Looking at watermelon, when watermelon's in season, you can make a complete meal of just watermelon, and it shouldn't be eaten with other foods. And the seeds themselves are actually beneficial. You can take just a handful of those seeds and toss them in a blender and blend them up, and use those in a tea. But watermelon seeds are actually beneficial. So seedless watermelon is a hybrid, and when you look at what Scripture has to say about fruit, should be seed-bearing fruit. So I would tend away from anything that is considered seedless. It's been hybridized away from producing seeds, and it's not the way God designed it. So I would tend towards those things that are more in their natural, God-designed way of being produced. I know it seems like a pain sometimes to spit out the seeds, but when you know that the seeds are actually beneficial for you, that may change your perception of it. So a watermelon meal not only is it good hydration, but there's lots of good compounds in watermelon that are actually known by athletes to help in the recovery process post-athletic event. They help reduce delayed onset muscle soreness. So that's a benefit of watermelon. Tomatoes, again, you can make a whole meal of them. Eat them alone. You don't want to have any other fruit or vegetables in them. And this is when you're kind of doing a protocol or a procedure of trying to reverse a cancerous condition, as opposed to someone on a regular diet, which should be a regular diet, should be a whole foods plant-based diet in its own right. But we're going to be concentrating. And one of the things that gets concentrated with a meal of tomatoes is lycopene. Lycopene is one of the primary phytopigments in tomatoes. You've probably heard of it, but lycopenes are very good for helping to keep one healthy, as well as to reverse cancerous trends. In particular, men can benefit from the lycopenes in tomatoes with respect to prostate issues. It's very high in vitamin content. And again, always look for the fresh or vine ripened. And when we say vine ripened, that's not red tomatoes that have been, they're red in the store because they were clipped on the vine green and then let ripen on the vine. Those are vine ripened tomatoes, but they're not like ripened on the vine connected to the vine. So just need to be aware of that. And there's some very delicious looking tomatoes on Zwieback. So Zwieback is basically toast, twice baked bread, two bake. That's a good German word, Zwieback. And that can be one way to eat your tomatoes.